Okay, I'd like to reconvene the Albany Unified School District Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, June 28th, 2016. Can we have a roll call, please?
Board Member Stapleton Gray.
Here.
Board Member Blanchard.
Here.
Board Member Lowe.
Here.
Vice President Black.
Here.
President Rosenbaum.
Here, and for those who wish to participate, we will now have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to reading of the AUSD Vision and Mission Statement.
Thank you. The mission of the Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student.
Thank you. The board took one action in closed session. The board unanimously gave our superintendent, Val Williams, a satisfactory evaluation for this past school year. That brings us to approval of the agenda. Do we have any corrections or additions to the agenda?
No. I'll move the agenda.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Brings us to approval of the consent calendar. Do we have any questions on the consent calendar?
Well,
I have a question on item D, 3 and 4. No other questions?
I
You
did
still looking?
actually, what's on page 8? I'm sorry, I should have prepared this. 7, 8. Yeah. Counseling Field Experience Agreement. Sonoma University, I just had a correction to that.
Correction
Couple
to,
of corrections.
do you want to put those in the record or just pass them on to Jackie?
They've been passed on. I just
Okay.
wanted to be sure they were in the record.
Okay. I'm getting old, Mr. Guard. I could not find the completed resolutions for the authorized signatures on those two contracts. So I looked and I looked and I looked at it. I used every, I know you said, well, it was on some devices. I tried 3 different devices and I couldn't find them.
No problem. So we
There
have
it
it
is.
here. For some reason on, I heard that on iPads, this PDF, for pages where the PDFs are filled in, it didn't come up. But essentially, the resolution notes us, it notes the contract number associated with it, and then the 3 staff members who are authorized to sign. There's also another page.
Yeah, there was a, right there, yeah. Okay.
Where again, it just notes the district and the
And the contract number. And then the same thing for the other?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that, for the record, that the board and the public got a chance to see that, including myself.
And one other thing, just for the record, Resolution 2015-16-21, temporary borrowing between funds, on page 72, there's the wrong date. It says fiscal year 2015 to 16, should be 2016-17.
Any other questions on the consent calendar? Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Brings us to board and superintendent report.
Thank you, President Rosenbaum. Just want to let everybody know that summer school is well underway. We have our extended school year program for our special education students and also our credit recovery. This year, we also have our bridge program for our students who need a little bit of extra assistance from grades 5 to 6 and grades 7 to 8. And both Peter Parenti and I have been going to summer school under the very good leadership of Melissa Poole. And she actually, just so you know, she goes in about an hour early every morning and walks the campus and walks classrooms to make sure everything is ready for learning. So I really want to commend our new summer school principal.
Great. Do we have any other report? Seeing none, we'll move on to persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. And those who wish to address the board, please fill out a speaker card if you haven't already. And board practice limits each speaker to no more than 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the board's ability to discuss or act on items which are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items may be referred to staff for comment or for consideration on a future agenda. Do we have anyone to make comments or questions on something not on the agenda? Oh, I gave that speech for nothing.
That's good practice.
That brings us to our review and discussion item. Now, I know that it's scheduled for 7:25, and I'm wondering if we may want to, in case there are members of the public who would like to be here, if we might want to reorder the agenda a little bit.
What do we have after this?
We have some review and action items. The first one being the Educator Effectiveness Grant Plan. I think it would be fair to wait for a few minutes before we start talking
Sure, we
about
can
the
take care of-
facilities. So let's
All right.
take care of some of our business. Is that acceptable?
If I can make a recommendation that we wait on items 4 and 5 until after the discussion,
Yes.
maybe do items 1, 2, and 3 respectively.
Great. So that brings us then to the review and action. Item 1, approve the Educator Effectiveness Grant Plan, which is on page 124.
Thank you, President Rosenbaum. Trustees, I'd like to turn this over to our Chief Business Official and to our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for the Educator Effectiveness Grant Plan.
Thank you, Superintendent Williams and Board of Trustees. On May 10th, the Albany Unified School District Board of Education reviewed this as a discussion item only. Staff provided the following information. In January, the state governor proposed a one-time amount of mandated cost reimbursements with the intent to support California state standards implementation. And then in May of 2015, the governor's revision proposed an increase to that amount and held steady with the intent to support these state standards. And then in June, a smaller amount was ultimately approved. And it was a bit of a surprise for us to receive this add-on requirement to establish what's called the Educator Effectiveness Grant. Now in Albany, our LCAP already specifies several programs that create very highly qualified teachers, and the budget for 15-16 was based on that May revision. The Local Control Accountability Plan has these programs, and it's at this time that we ask that you guys would adopt the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant.
Board? Comments, questions?
No, we discussed this before.
I know.
Yeah, I have the same reaction. We've previously discussed it, and I think all of my questions were addressed.
I agree.
At that time, so I will move we approve the proposed plan for Albany Albany USD to expend funds related to the Teacher Effectiveness Grant.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. It brings us to the second reading and adoption of the Local Control Accountability Plan.
And I'm going to turn this over to Peter Parenti again, who is smiling greatly at this adoption of the
7:10.
Local Control
In my head, I
Accountability
have a
Plan.
time. I have a clock in my head, and the clock said about 8 o'clock tonight. This is a much larger item. So this is the Local Control Accountability Plan. Just for background information, we've got an audience here tonight. Welcome. The Local Control Accountability Plan is an important component of the local control funding formula. They go hand in hand. They are part of the state's efforts to reform school finance. A bit of background information, it began 3 years ago, and it was an effort for the state to provide more flexibility to the local school districts. This has already been reviewed and discussed at a previous board meeting 2 weeks ago, along with the introduction to the budget. And it is required that both the budget and the LCAP be approved at the same meeting and then moves on to the county office for their approvals. At the meeting, the board members provided several suggestions for changes, and since then I've made those changes in this revised LCAP and I highlight them in green so that you can quickly scan through this quite large document. And I want to reiterate a few things before the board may want to ask a few more clarifying questions. Stakeholders were involved in this process. We began in January, where the advisory committee met. We met once a month. And in between those meetings, the advisory committee planned for engagement strategies where groups at the school sites, PTAs, staff, teachers, principals, district leaders, and other agencies in the community could have input about how we would write this plan and what we would include in our plan. About 1,000 people this year were consulted, and their notes were taken carefully and brought back to advisory council. And on that advisory council, we looked for patterns and trends, and we were able to identify things that we could include in the plan. We also identified things that were quite lofty and things that could not be budgeted for this current school year, but I've saved those ideas because they may come to fruition in the future. Some of the trends that came across the stakeholder input included caring and engaging staff. That was by far a trend we heard last year and a trend we continue to hear this year, that our students do best when they have caring and engaging staff members. Home and school support is very important as well, accessible intervention services, and parents who are engaged. Some of the important highlights here, there are 3 main sections. Each section is kind of segmented into its own part. There are 8 state priorities and 27 metrics that have to be met. And this document reflects really a 3-year projection. So the plan says what we're going to be doing in 16-17, and it also projects what we'll be doing in 17-18 and 18-19. This draft plan is approved. If it's approved now, it'll go on to the Alameda County Office of Ed, where they will thoroughly review it for a variety of issues: stakeholder engagement, goals and programs and services, and budget. They'll provide written feedback, and it'll be addressed directly to the school board president. So our recommendation, both Alan and I worked hard on this one, is to review and approve the local control accountability plan for Albany. Thanks.
Comments from the board?
No, I'd just like to thank Peter for making the changes that the board requested. I've gone through them all. They look great.
Thank you.
I echo that sentiment. That's a very large document. There were a fair number of changes. Thank you for addressing all of those comments and suggestions. The one I was going to highlight is we have previously talked about possible inaccuracies in our statistics having to do with the number of high school students who complete the UC-CSU requirements. And I just wanted to flag that we think that may be undercounting the number who truly are completing because we don't necessarily have access to data that would tell us how many students maybe complete a certain requirement at a local community college, for example. So I just wanted to mention that, to acknowledge that we've discussed that, and then to express some hope that we can continue to chip away at that so we can get a more accurate representation of what the true number is.
Thank you, Board Member Blanchard. And we have a note here with staff to prepare a staff report for this coming fall on this very topic. We are interested as well in exploring options to see how children could potentially meet these requirements outside of the Albany High School, while delicately balancing the strong value we have for the quality programs on the high school campus. So we'll get that report to you in the fall.
It's the question that comes up often about making sure that we have accurate data, and sometimes the data that we see is not the data that we intuitively know is not accurate.
It's an interesting count to take. If you can consider about 300 students and about 3 years, starting from their sophomore year or even their freshman year, and you're counting every course on their transcript and then only counting it if it gets a C, and then filling in all the A through G requirements. I mean, even software struggles with that kind of an issue. Luckily, we have plenty of counselors, and we have a high school administrator who knows this work, and they've still found the best way to do it is to print each transcript and to manually go through each transcript. And it's tedious work, but if it matters for even one kid, it matters. So it's important. Yeah.
I understand that process, having done it many
Right.
times.
We also find, I will say, we also find some flexibility is worth something. Some children choose not to follow those rigorous requirements because they already have an intent to either attend a community college or a private college that doesn't meet those requirements. And some of those requirements can lead them away from other electives that they'd prefer to take. So we want to be mindful about what does the other, for example, in this LCAP, it says 59% of those graduates from 2015, 59%. So what were the other 41% doing? And that's a really interesting question to see if they would have qualified if they wanted to, and where did they go? I think the Cougar Courier this year gives us a good glimpse of where kids go to college. And there are also children who really do prefer to go to a trade school or a community college before they choose to go to a four-year institution. So good questions. I think this year it's the biggest, one of the highlights of the LCAP is that it raises this issue.
Yeah, I think that it's incumbent on the board to periodically review the high school graduation requirements and make sure that they're serving our students' needs. And maybe we can agendize that for some time in the next school year.
Can I ask a question of clarification, Board Member Black? Are you referring to the California high school graduation requirements?
No, the Albany high school graduation requirements. Because for those in our audience who don't know what A through G refers to, those are requirements for entry to the California college, the CSU or University of California systems. And Albany high school graduation requirements are not identical to those. So it's possible to graduate from Albany High School without having all the requirements necessary to enter the University of California or California State University systems, which can be fine if the kid doesn't want to go to one of those systems, if they want to go to community college or a private school somewhere else that has different requirements. But we want to be sure that they are getting what they do need and that they're not just don't know what they need and therefore aren't taking courses that they need. So we want to be sure that they're graduating with the coursework that they need to follow the career path or school path that they're interested in. And we should periodically review what we are requiring for graduation to make sure that nobody is getting a high school diploma from Albany unprepared to go on in life, either to a college or career.
And that's actually a requirement of school boards to periodically review graduation requirements. It's a responsibility that we have, and we need to take that very seriously.
And we have agendized the topic of A to G requirements in I think, September, I believe.
Good.
So I would echo the other board members as far as thanking the staff, all members of the staff and members of the public, and all the input and hard work that went into putting together the local control accountability plan. And I thank you for the green highlights, because that made it much easier for me as a senior board member to find those changes and to review them.
Yes, very valuable.
I
Thank
think it
you.
was useful for any board member.
Useful, and I will say it communicates a little bit of trust, because you have to trust that I highlighted the green things that I changed. And I had to trust myself, because later I thought, I have to read this whole thing one more time to make sure that any thing I typed got green highlighted, except for periods and spelling and stuff. But yeah, that made it easier, I hope, so.
It was
It
great.
did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 23
Well, I move
minutes
that we
after 7.
approve the
Oh,
local
yes, we
control
need to-
accountability plan.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I keep jumping the gun.
Yes, so now we can go back to our regularly
I think we can go back to our scheduled agenda for 7:25, which is a review and discussion of the facilities timeline scenarios.
Thank you,
And-
President Rosenbaum. Trustees, I'm going to turn this over to our Chief Business Official, Alan Gard, who is going to walk us through the facilities timeline scenarios. Mr. Gard.
Thank you, Superintendent Williams. So as noted in a subsequent board item, as noted in a subsequent board item, the Alameda County Registrar of Voters have certified the election results for the passage of measures B and E. With that, we can begin discussions on taking theory to action. Tonight, we'll review 3 possible scenarios. Generally speaking, these project timelines reflect what has to occur sequentially. So if a timeline is missed, then that would delay future tasks to be completed. Depending on the extent to which those timelines are missed, that could significantly delay the completion of the project. Ideally, trying to target the summer for a majority of the construction work. If timelines are missed, then that could delay a whole project a full year from being completed. And so there are pros and cons to each scenario that I will go through, and we can discuss it as we go through each scenario. There are construction costs and tax implications to each scenario, and we can review that in detail at a subsequent board meeting. Tonight's meeting is really to get some general feedback and ideas on the 3 general scenarios.
Alan, just a minute. Are people having trouble hearing in the back? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was watching your face. Got to speak right into the mic. It's very important.
Sorry about that. Should I start over, or okay, sure. So as noted in a subsequent board item, the Alameda County Registrar of Voters have certified the election results for the passage of measures B and E. With that, we're able to begin discussions, taking theory to action. We're going to walk through 3 general timeline scenarios. With each scenario, there's pros and cons that we'll work through. Generally speaking, these timelines have to occur sequentially. So if a task is missed, then that would delay future tasks from being completed. Depending on the extent to which those deadlines are missed, that could delay a project a full year from opening, mainly because we want to target majority of the construction during the summertime, which is most ideal. We would be able to review detailed financials such as construction costs and tax implications at a subsequent board meeting. Tonight's board item is to focus on collecting general thoughts and ideas about the 3 main scenarios. Regarding tax implications, there's 2 main methods that I think of related to tax measures. One I call a roller coaster, which is it's dependent on the activity that's occurring, and as the activity fluctuates, meaning as bonds are issued, as bonds are paid off, the tax rate each year would change depending on that. There's also another method related to bond measures, and that's like I call it a total tax rate target, and that's trying to set a target amount for the tax rate, and that could be a consistent tax rate for a set period, and that would provide clearly inform the community on expectations as far as taxes, as well as be able to meet different timelines that we're going to look at. We'll have more detailed information at a subsequent board meeting, but that's the kind of general ideas.
So can you take us through these scenarios? And
Sure.
then
We're going to walk through 3 scenarios. Each scenario has the school logo connected to it, so it's easy to reference between which project we're looking at.
We're very familiar with the school logos, but maybe everyone in the audience isn't. So if you
I
could
see
just
an
walk
honor down
through
there.
them quickly for.
So the first logo, the large red A, is the Albany High School. The second logo, which is the black cobra, is the Albany Middle School. The dolphins are Marin Elementary, and then the otter is Ocean View Elementary. And so those logos and the order are consistent through the three scenarios. And we see in this first scenario multiple projects occurring at the same time. This is construction all during the same time period. There are pros and cons to this scenario.
Could you tell us what the different colors mean?
Yes. So the blue bars are kind of like different work that's going on between the architect, the design teams. It's like administrative work, working through documents, papers, things like that. The green bars are the bid processes for each project. The gray bars are the DSA approval timeframe.
DSA.
And DSA means the Division of the State Architect. They're the state agency that reviews all California K-12 school districts to ensure school buildings are safe structurally, they're accessible, and
They meet the building code.
and safety. And the red bars are the construction phase for each time frame. There's dates connected to the red bars to note the target start and end date of the construction phase. And at the end of construction phase is when it's projected that we'd be able to occupy that facility.
So for those who can't see that, or if you can blow it up, it looks like the completion that would be for the high school at January 2nd, 2018, and
Correct.
May 1st, 2018 for the middle school, et cetera.
Correct. And so I should also note that for each scenario, it's under the assumption that the next phase of the project occurs in the fall of 2016. So pros and cons to this first scenario. A pro is that the facility needs of these projects would be addressed the soonest, and there would be the least amount of construction cost impact due to cost escalation. There's also cons associated with the scenario, such as having 3 major projects within the city of Albany would be very, very disruptive. It would be the biggest disruption among the 3 scenarios, as well as by moving forward with Marin Elementary, which is noted here. If we move forward with Marin Elementary as soon as possible, then that just means less time that we would have in order to engage the community about possibly about temporary housing, because for Marin Elementary and Ocean View Elementary, we would need to discuss temporary housing in order to complete those projects, whereas the Albany High School and Albany Middle School, because of their locations, we would not need temporary housing for those projects.
And I'd like to add that as when we talk about eventually temporary housing, we would have to discuss not just Marin, but Marin and Ocean View at the same time, because the students would end up probably in the same place.
Okay, so just to be thorough about this, we're not considering in any of these scenarios doing Marin and Ocean View at the same time. And the reasoning is we'd have to move an entire school full of kids somewhere, and we don't think we could do it with 2 schools at the same time. Is that right?
Correct. We would need to find a temporary housing for over 1,100 students. And given the availability of space in the city of Albany, that is difficult.
Okay, so, and the other question is, all of these scenarios assume Marin to come first, and then Ocean View. Why?
Sure. So going back a bit, let's see. So in late 2012, there were seismic studies done at each of our school facilities, which noted that Marin Elementary and Ocean View Elementary had seismic deficiencies. Those reports recommended that because of the projected time frame on when large earthquakes would occur in this general area, that we address the mitigating the seismic deficiencies as soon as possible. So Albany did not have any bond funds at the time. The state had some state facility funds, and the idea was if we move forward with trying to access some state funding, we would be able to hopefully have the state pay for Marin Elementary. We went through designing Marin Elementary, applying for state funds, and jumping through all the different hoops that the state requires in order to access funding. During that time frame, the state's facility funds dwindled, and in December they let us know that unless the school district had the ability to contribute 50% of the cost of the project, that they would not continue looking at our project. We then, let's see. So now going back to today, we have plans for Marin Elementary. There are, because of the environment that the design was developed, there's a possibility that we can look at adding some additional features to it. And with that, because we have designs for Marin Elementary, the idea is that we would move forward with Marin first.
Okay, so we're more ready to go with Marin Elementary than the others.
Yes.
I understand the Sustainability Committee has been looking at that Marin design and wants some changes. How far do our committee members can tell us how far along that's come?
Well, we could actually ask some of them to speak to that if we want to, but my understanding of what the Sustainability Committee has done so far has been to recommend to us that the district adopt a set of guidelines, namely the California High Performing Schools Guidelines. So rather than micromanaging by the committee or by the board in terms of the specifics of the design, the way to get high-quality buildings to upgrade the current design is to ask the architects to revise the design in light of the guidelines, the CHIPS, California High Performing Schools Guidelines. I think that's a fair statement. Would you like to comment on that, Pat? In other words, I think what I'm saying is we wouldn't expect the Sustainability Committee to bring us a set of revisions. What they've done is they've brought us a set of guidelines and asked us to approve those guidelines, and then to ask the architect to do a redesign or modification of the original design based on designing it to the CHIPS guidelines.
We reviewed those at our last meeting
The
last
CHIPS
week
guidelines, yes.
and basically endorsed that.
So the question is, would that process mean that Marin is not as ready as we thought it was, and maybe Ocean View might be as ready or ready before Marin?
Well, I'm pretty sure the answer to the first part is yes. I'm not so sure about the second question.
Okay.
I did see that there were some questions in the audience, but I'd rather go through, if we could go through the three scenarios and then take all the comments? Okay.
Just to be overly cautious, we built in some time with the Marin timeframe in order to incorporate possible changes. Any changes, we would also work with the design team so that they're aware and we can discuss possible changes. And with the sustainability/integrated design committee, they take a look at it. They take a look at it at a holistic. They take a holistic approach to construction and buildings. So additional features don't necessarily translate into additional cost.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I have one more question that's to confound the issue a little bit more. Not really part of the bond measure, not something that we were talking about with respect to that, but something we have been talking about is that the district office is going to have to move, and we need to find a place to put it. And one of the possible scenarios that was mentioned a while ago was that it would temporarily be located on the Ocean View campus. That could affect, since the district office has to move fairly soon, that could affect timelines for construction at Ocean View. I was just wondering if you took that into consideration in these scenarios.
I did not. In December, we were notified that we would need to relocate from our current premises in UC Village by basically this time next year. And so we're continually looking at various options on both short-term and long-term space for the district
Okay,
office.
so there's really no way the Ocean View could be ready in time for that in any case.
No.
Okay, sorry, proceed.
Just to be clear, the discussion on location of the school district building or offices is outside of the bond issues that were passed for students and for building, correct? Although we may need to temporarily use some spaces. That's a discussion that we really haven't had yet, and we just have to make sure that it's clear that no decision's been made.
Correct.
We're still, need a lot of input into that. The other question that I have, you mentioned the 50% from the state. Is that still an outside possibility? And if so, and the state did contribute 50% for Marin, then there would be some substantial savings that would be made to our citizens.
Yes. 1 second while my computer went to sleep. We are still in the process of applying for state funding for both Marin and Ocean View Elementary because the state has funds dedicated for seismic mitigation, and so both school projects would be eligible. However, the state facility funds are dwindling. In November, there is a measure on the ballot for a statewide bond measure. However, that doesn't necessarily mean, that doesn't necessarily guarantee funding for Albany. because one of the ideas or one of the thoughts is that the governor doesn't necessarily support this measure, and so he's not required to issue bonds even if the state measure passes. So,
Citizens should write to the governor.
I don't mean to be rude, like, can we get through the
Yeah.
pros and the cons so we can get feedback from the audience?
Yes.
Because the whole point is that, we have these people here who may have questions, right?
Yes.
So, and the board shouldn't just be talking all the time, so let's just like getting through the pros and the cons, and then let's
Yeah,
listen
sorry,
to-
Pat, I just wanted to be sure we had all possible scenarios covered.
Okay.
And I think that covered, those questions covered
Okay.
all three scenarios, so continue.
okay.
Number 2. There we go.
Okay,
I think
so
it's the graph that's most important, so maybe,
Yeah, nobody can read
yeah.
the text on the
That
left,
makes
so
it
let's just
easier.
look at the graph.
I'm blowing it up on my screen.
So this is scenario 2. The idea for scenario 2 is we would take one project at a time. Once construction is completed with one project, we can begin construction at the next project. And it goes the Albany Middle School, Albany High School, Marin, and then Ocean View. I should note the first scenario had all 4 projects being complete by the fall of 2019. For scenario 2, we would look at the fall of 2021 for all 4 projects to be complete. If there's no questions here, I can go to the third
Just
scenario.
the pros and
I
cons.
thought you were
Oh,
going to do
sure.
the pros and the
Yes.
cons of each scenario after you did it.
Sorry about that.
Uh-huh.
Into the mic.
Yes.
Just shift it over a little bit.
So scenario 2, this is this causes the least impact construction-wise on the community because it's one project at a time. This is this has the longest time frame, and so there's more time to meet, plan, discuss, and review the various projects. Some of the cons are because it's the longest time frame, then it's the longest time in order to address the facility needs of each project. And because of cost escalation each year, the construction cost would be higher in this scenario than the other two, or than the other two. And because of the timing, it would require that we would need to fully update the design plans for Marin Elementary based on the code updates from the Division of State Architect, because they essentially have a one-year period plus a renewal in order to begin construction on approved plans.
Number 3.
So scenario 3, it has Albany High School and Albany Middle School generally being around the same time, and then moving forward with Marin Elementary and then Ocean View Elementary. All 4 projects would be targeted to be completed by the fall of 2020. The pros and cons are, for pro, it has a reduced cost escalation compared to the previous scenario. It allows time for comprehensive discussion on temporary housing for Marin and Ocean View Elementary. And it also allows time for incorporating any possible changes to the Marin design when looking at sustainability or added features. The cons are that it would be a higher impact on the community compared to the previous scenario because it would have two big projects conducted at the same time.
Okay.
just for clarification for people who might not know, the high school project involves adding a building to the current campus without affecting any of the other buildings that are there now. And the middle school involves building across the street from the current campus. So neither of those would displace any students, which is why we could do them sooner and less planning is required.
So
Correct.
does the district have a preference, and if so, what is that and why?
Do you mean a recommendation?
A recommendation, I'm sorry.
Staff recommendation.
So currently, this third scenario is our recommendation. However, we are beginning this discussion, and so with input from the community and more discussion, then we can look at a future board meeting to actually take action.
All right, so tonight we're just discussing and reviewing. Val, do you have a?
Yes, I want to really emphasize that this is a very basic preliminary recommendation because we have not really heard much from the community. Obviously, everyone's here tonight, so make sure that we get to hear what the concerns are and what their issues are.
So before we get to the community, Pat?
Well, I'm very interested in hearing what the community has to say, but in particular, I would like to invite, I was one of the board members who served on the Integrated Design and Sustainability Committee, and I see at least 2 of the members here who are volunteers from the community and have expertise in architecture and construction. So I would like to invite them to, if they choose, to come up and give maybe their opinions about the 3 options. I know I had a sense of sort of what direction you were going and the reasoning, and I think it'd be nice for everyone to hear it.
Do we have those members who would like to make a comment or not?
Yes, yeah, I think, yeah, Alan, I think, some of your comments at the committee were very enlightening to me. I don't have an expertise in this area, so if you don't mind, I would like you to express some of your.
I actually think that might be better after we hear some of the concerns from the community. Ross, you had something to say?
Yeah, so each of these 3 has some expectations for how long things take, and I'm noticing that the Division of State Architect is 90 to 100 to 108 days in all cases. Is no more than a little over 3 months. We had heard in the fall that Marin's approval was pending. Has Marin's design been approved?
No.
So if in October and November, we've got something in, and in June,
That's a good point.
how amenable is DSA to, we need this by, do they act within, say, a 90-day window if it's absolutely required because you're going to be digging up dirt? I mean, these are a bit of a trapeze act, and especially if you're talking about schools out bringing the bulldozers because we've got 14 months to get a school here. I would worry a lot that we suddenly go from a 14-month window for a school to a second year because DSA was 3 months late.
Yes.
DSA tends to dance very quickly.
We've built up a lot of trust with the Division of State Architect over the past 2 years. However, their responsibility is ensuring that each project is completed well, that it's safe for our students and safe for staff. And so even though we have timelines and expectations, it's not their timelines and expectations. The timelines that are incorporated in these scenarios are based on current information, current projects that have been going through the Division of State Architect Oakland office. And it is definitely a concern that Marin Elementary has taken much longer than that. There are various reasons, and not all of it is because of the Division of State Architects. Some of it is because of response time with contractors and addressing comments from them. And so it's not all Division of State Architect.
So maybe we'll hear, if they want to, we'll hear from our members of our committee and our architects and first, and then move to public comment?
I just want to make a clarification.
I agree.
I think that would be fine.
Yeah, because then you can respond to what you hear as well.
I think that would be
I
fine.
just want
Yes.
to make a quick clarification to your question, which is,
Can you identify yourself, please, for the record?
my name is Juan Barroso with DCA, the district's program manager. Good evening, members of the board, members of the public. Quick clarification to your comment. The timeline presented here shows a period of 90 days for the DSA review. This program counts work days, which is 5 days a week. So the 90 days here really represents 4 months for the shorter projects. For the longer projects, it represents 5 months. So it's still an estimate of what we think it's going to take. The process these projects are going to follow is slightly different. It's more of a collaborative process with DSA than the Marin project. So we would expect to deliver these projects within these timeframes. Again, it's just an estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Let's hear from the public.
So we'd like to hear from the public. If you could keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Please fill out a speaker card if you have not yet. And you can hand it in as you're coming up to speak. If somebody has mentioned your comment, it would be great if you just agree with them so that we can get through and make sure everybody's heard. So who would like to be first? There you are. Come on up. Tell us who you are and questions and comments.
Hi, my name is Erica Lockhart, Albany resident for 5 years. And I attended the previous board meeting. I've been following this very closely, asking a lot of questions on next door. Appreciate members of the board's input to help us clarify some things. And one of the things that's come up in the past week, I would like to address Mr. Guard's comment about how much this is going to cost on the two different bases, one being the roller coaster method and one being the even method. Now, I don't know how many people that hear from the public are aware that Councilman Barnes had put out a spreadsheet that allowed you to put in your current assessed value of your home, and it did an estimate based on the information that he had and some information from the school board on what your liabilities, tax liabilities would be in the coming years over a 30-year period based on these two new bond measures. So what I would like to ask the board is, since that's kind of unofficial information, although it's based on your estimates or numbers that were provided by the board, I would like to see something come out to the community that addressed any inaccuracies or assumptions that were in that spreadsheet so that we could get a more accurate picture and maybe do it in these two methods, one by the roller coaster method, one by the even method, and apply those to the 3 timeline scenarios. So that being said, that's the only thing that I have of concern about the costs. The other thing that I wanted to bring up that hasn't really been addressed, but I think it should be brought up now, and initially it was on some kind of unofficial agenda. That's going to be the role of the oversight committee and how it's going to be selected. And I understand that no decisions are going to be made tonight based on this meeting, and that this is simply discussion and it's giving out information. But I think that we ought to have the criteria and how the selection is going to be made, and have that oversight committee in place before decisions are made. So I would like to get assurances from the board that that be done and that that be made available to the public also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Those are 2 sets of very good questions. Do we have some response?
For the first question regarding the tax rate, I would recommend a subsequent board meeting where we could bring the financial advisor on board and they can go into detail about various scenarios and different methods. That way I'm not providing misinformation. For the second question regarding the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, one of the great things about it is that we're statutorily required to have a committee in place before any bonds are issued and any bonds are spent. And so, there will definitely be communication about a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, how to apply for it, and the creation of the committee.
How will this information be promulgated?
So, and how this will be communicated in several ways. One, we are working with the City of Albany. The city manager has the availability to get an email out to all members of the community through, I guess it's like an email system. And so they've agreed to help us get the word out to members of the community that are not Albany families in the school district. So we will have information on our district website. We will be posting it on our district Facebook page, like us on Facebook. We will also put it out on Twitter for those of you who tweet, and we'll be working with the city. So we're definitely going to make sure that it's also easily accessible on the website, so you don't have to click through a whole bunch of steps to get to the information. It will be, I'm hoping, Ms. Benabusen, a one-click, and you are there information. So I would really encourage folks to please check the website. We're also going to see if we can access Nextdoor, because the school district, believe it or not, can't create a Nextdoor account. I've tried because we're not a home resident, but there is access, we believe, through the city, through the citywide Nextdoor account to get that information out also. We also put out to our Albany families what we called our district-wide e-tree, and that goes out in an email. Did I cover all of that, Ms. Matabusen?
You can also put it in the local publications, newspaper, patch, the journal.
And I, as a citizen and not a board member, I promise that if no one else does it, I will put it on Nextdoor, on several of those threads. So
those sound like very, very good ideas. My only concern is that, except for the few that Ms. Manabusen mentioned, they were all digital. So if you were to consider certain segments of the population who might not have ready access, you might want to remember to consider maybe through the senior center some outreach as well.
Actually, I think we can do that. I'm also thinking about the public library, because there's a lot of access by the public to the
Do
library.
you think we could send a postcard to every resident of Albany?
We could. I think that because this is probably going to be several meetings, we would have to determine if we're going to send a postcard out for every meeting where we discuss facilities.
Well, we could send out, we'll know in advance when the meetings are. We could send one postcard with dates.
We could, as long as we didn't switch those dates or anything, we absolutely could.
Okay.
Yes.
we want to make sure that everyone is informed. Next question. Oh, Charlie.
So I just wanted to follow up on the comment about the report from the fiscal advisor. I have two suggestions as to what would make that report useful to me, and I hope to other people as well. One would be that the fiscal advisor give us a trajectory of tax rates under the various scenarios, not just for the new bonds, but for our existing outstanding bonds.
Good idea.
And the second suggestion would be that within that report, we also have a comparison of potential dates at which we would issue bonds compared to what the district's expected bonding capacity at those dates would be. Thank you.
Great.
Ross.
Yeah, that relates to a comment I was going to make. We will necessarily need a bond capacity waiver. None of these scenarios works in our current bonding capacity timeline. So if we're going to do that, it'd be really good to know how long that's likely to take, when it can be requested, just to get that there. The other comment I wanted to make on the timeline in general is the time requirements for board approval is 0 days in all cases. I wouldn't say that at all reflects that the board is a rubber stamp, and I'd say we certainly are, I would say, communicated with very well and come to good and steady decisions, and we occasionally decide we can't and push it to another meeting. I don't imagine that for these sorts of things we're going to have will be surprised. I really don't anticipate that. But it isn't really a zero-day approval process. I think we can be a lot more responsive than the DSA has been.
Right, well, of course, the board approval is in one meeting, but we could have had 4 meetings before the approval date.
Well, which is important to agendize them. So.
Let's get back to the public.
Yeah.
Who would like to speak? Come on up.
Well, good evening. My name is Peg Havey, and I've been an Albany resident for 20 years.
Hey, could you speak into the mic, please?
Okay. I have sort of a tendential question, which doesn't pertain to exactly what you're speaking about right now, but it does come under the umbrella. I have a report here which indicates a company called TBWB Strategies. You operated as a consultant, I imagine, for promoting these provisions, B&E. And the city paid out about $22,300 to them. Is there some way to find out what kind of services we got back from these people? I mean, whether you have the answer tonight or whether I can go on the website to get it, then direct me to it.
Sure. TBWB Strategies provided pre-election services. The $22,000 amount, I'm making an assumption that it's noted on a warrant report that we provide, and that amount most likely included cost of mailing, sending out different mailers to the community. But I can definitely review that and ensure.
Okay, if it was a check paid by the district, that wasn't the mailers. That would have been the surveys that were done before the board put the information on the bond. So TBWB did
The polling.
polling for us, both online and telephone calls, and gave us advice as to whether we could pass a bond and how we should go about doing it. So any of the mailers, any other services that were provided by TBWB after the board put the bond measures on the ballot were paid for by private citizens and private committee. The district is forbidden by law to pay any money or take any action to advocate for the bonds at that point.
I'd like to clarify what Board Member Black said. I do not believe they were hired to tell us how to pass the bond. The primary role in the beginning was for them to go out to the community through through surveys and calls in order for us to get information about the community's interest in and concerns about the school facilities and rebuilding. It was to get information about that.
Right.
And in our, probably, Mr. Guard can refer you to the board packets where they gave us presentations about the survey results and the other information.
Yeah, as expensive as these bonds are, they don't actually pay for everything that the district identified as a construction need. And one of the things TBWB helped us determine was how much of what we wanted to fund we actually could fund, and also what the public's priorities were, so we knew which projects would drop off the list. So those sorts of services.
So you can provide that information? That would be
Do
good
we
question.
remember which
Thank you.
agenda has those presentations?
Yes, I have.
So we can get that information so that you don't have to search through every single agenda.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thanks.
And how will we let our citizens know the results of your...
I'm actually taking notes on
Good.
questions, because I think what I'm going to work with Ms. Manabusan on is maybe creating something on our website that has a frequently asked questions that the public can go to. So whatever ones we can answer, I'm trying to capture as much as I can on notes, and as we get the answers, not only will you get it, but we'll be able to put it on the website with the answers.
Okay, that works?
Ron?
All right.
More questions?
Yeah, one slight clarification on it. So when you said, the city paid, the district paid, and it's important to remember that the city is a city and the district is a district, even though we're pretty much talking about the same citizens and constituents. So in this case, the school district had the bond issues. The school district has paid some money to the bond consultant in advance to determine how best to structure it. That we decided on the 2 types of bonds we did, et cetera. That was a school district expense and unrelated to the city.
Yeah, there were also financial consultants and lawyers who were paid, so that TVWB was not the only expense.
Yeah, unfortunately. Our next speaker?
Hi, Elizabeth Friedman Branoff, thank you. So I just wanted to, first say thank you for the this public meeting, but also for what you just talked about with all the communication going out. I think it is really important because we heard previously through previous meetings that community members felt that they weren't getting information. And you said that emails will go out to the community. I'm still a little, I don't understand quite how you get an email. Do you need to sign up for a list, or do you, how do you collect those emails so that they go out?
I don't know the specific answer to your question because I'm still trying to find out myself, but I'm working with the city of Albany. And I might be a little bit confused, but I know part of it is through the city has a next door sort of, I'll call it an account. And I think people who sign up for the next door get on that piece. We have a district-wide e-tree of parents their parents in our school district who have given us their email address, and we can send what's called an email blast out. So I would still need to work with the city on the specifics of all I know is that the city is really willing to work with us and trying to get the information out.
Yeah, I don't think the city has everybody's email address.
No, I think it's through this Nextdoor account is what I'm talking about,
Right.
not a separate.
But I would encourage people to sign up for our Facebook account, our website, because we try to keep those up to date.
Yeah, if you have an interest in it. yeah.
We have an answer about
I think I can
next door.
clarify just a little bit.
Can you come to the
you
mic,
need to come to
please?
the
Have to
mic.
come up to the mic, though.
Thank you.
I'm pretty loud, so I didn't think I needed the microphone.
Now, because we're being, people are hopefully watching at home and stuff.
When I first moved to Albany, I went to their website, and they have an email server there, and you can select everything from getting notification on which day your street is going to be swept.
Oh, I need that.
To notice of city council meetings.
I got it.
And that sort
And
of
those
thing.
go out to you in email?
Automatically.
Okay.
So once you sign up, and you can manage your subscription, and I think what the board here is talking about is getting the board as an option on that list. Am I correct?
I am really,
That
That's a
sounds
good
like what we
idea.
should do.
I think it's a
yes.
great idea. Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds like,
it's a work in progress.
Right.
So, and you can help us out. Just keep pushing those buttons, Eric.
Glad to hear it's a work in progress, and it just stressing the importance, and that it goes, that if you're sending the postcard or emails or Nextdoor or Facebook, that you alert people to spread the word about how to get on these lists and how to submit their email and how to get information, because that's critically important. And then my quick question is about what kind of research or options are there for the temporary school sites for the elementary schools? Where are the kids going to go during the construction?
Ooh, what a great question.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. So first of all, I believe that there needs to be a lot of communication about the process in and of itself. We cannot make any determination or make any kind of recommendation to the school board about where we're going to have temporary housing until we engage the community. So we will be scheduling town hall meetings. We need to get parental input from both Ocean View and from Marin. We also obviously have to explore what potential options are out there You know, are there schools that are available out there? Are we going to look at a multitude of creative ideas? And I really believe that there's a lot of creativity and a lot of intelligence out in our community. And through getting that feedback, we can come up with some really good ideas.
So not to anticipate the public conversation, which I think will be informative, but I just want to ask that in doing this, we remember to talk to the city. They are our partners in Albany, and we have a really good example from 15 years ago when Albany High was rebuilt, and the city allowed the school district to place portables on the tennis courts. We had Portable High for 4 years, and Albany High students stayed in Albany, and somehow it worked. So I just wanted to make sure we remembered that we do have that as an example, and it requires beginning a conversation with the city probably sooner rather than later.
And actually, that conversation is going on, so, you know, I have confidence in that. Maybe our council member could speak to that.
Serendipitously.
Thank you. And Nick Pilch, yeah, sure, yeah, whatever you need, we'll.
Okay, we're going to put portables in your backyard.
We'll work together with you. Nick Pilch, Albany resident, wanted to congratulate you, first of all, on the passage of B&E, and to say that I was very impressed with how the board and the district handled that, doing all the outreach, the surveys, and figuring out what you could do, and it was a textbook example for me of how to do that, and now we've got this. We've got this money to work with. I was a representative on the Sustainability Integrated Design Committee. I don't want to speak too much to that or speak for that committee necessarily, but I do, as myself personally, I do want to support option 3. I do think that it sounds like you know, taking that time, it sounds like an option that allows for a little bit more time to be taken to get things right. And I know that that's one of my concerns is to do this right. And I think that, again, I don't want to speak for that committee, but the quality came up in our discussions in that committee. And I think taking the time also is a way to ensure quality design as well. And, also, I would note that it seems that the San Gabriel site and the high school addition, although you'd want to have some construction during the summer months, that seems not particularly necessary for those since they're additions. They're not replacing schools, so I wouldn't, if I were you, I wouldn't be held up by that particular timeline as to when to fit those projects in. If they can be accelerated a bit by not worrying too much about the summers, I think that might be a good idea. For the other school projects, I think it makes more sense, the 2 others. Thank you.
Charlie.
Before you sit down, Nick, I wanted to clarify something you said there. The principle that you articulated was to take more time and make sure we did it right, but you also mentioned scenario 3. Scenario 2 is actually a longer timeline than scenario 3. And so I wondered if you could clarify your thinking on that for us.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. I was looking just graphically, and somehow I thought that scenario 3 was a longer timeline. I guess I would say that I support an option that staggers that Ocean View and Marin construction so that they're not happening at the same time mostly, and an option that takes the other 2 projects in a different, also not overlapping their schedules with the 2 others. But I think that the annex and the high school new building certainly could happen at the same time. I don't see any issues with that. So I guess that is 2.
No, it's 3.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
One of the cons of 2 is the construction costs will go up as time goes by, and that's going to be a burden on the populace.
Right, but you just described scenario 3, so that's fine.
We like it.
I could give this to you after I'm done. Because I have my notes on there. Hi, good evening. My name is Madison Lee. I'm an architect. I currently practice in San Francisco, and I've done lots of school design, primarily private schools, but also done public schools. And it just so happens that I recently went through a DSA process in a school in Larkspur. And we did 2 DSA processes. The first one was a lot longer than we anticipated, so there were a lot of surprises with DSA. But with the second process, it went through quite quickly. So, it kind of all depends on who you get and what the comments are. I am thankful that you provided these 3 scenarios. What I want to understand is whether you had to consider, in particularly like scenario number 3, whether you could group the start of Marin with either the Albany High School or the middle school as one process moving forward, and then coming back doing either, the middle school or Ocean View as a second process. My concern with option 3 is that you would be displacing the elementary groups together, which is a huge group to be displacing at one time. So I was wondering if there's any thoughts to that. And then another question regarding the bond is whether the bond include any funds that were allocated, or is there any funds for the relocation of the district office? Was that part of the bond measure or not, or is that a separate issue altogether? And then with regards, since I am an architect and I do a lot with green design in schools, with regards to the green initiative, with school designs and even commercial projects, we all have to meet certain criteria. Cal State, which is a green criteria to meet certain green initiatives, as well as LEED. Both those are written into the code, so at a bare minimum, you have to do LEED Silver, which is, pretty easy to achieve these days. And because, if you're doing it right, most schools are making sure that the schools are designed to a green standard. And so my regards to the CHIPS standard and initiative, why that came up, because I've done CHIPS before. It's a different level of standard, and I'm wondering what brought about needing to do CHIPS versus just meeting code minimum, which is already pretty high standard because it's LEED Silver and or Cal Green. This is sort of built into the code as it is, and as the code gets revised every few years. There's a new one coming out next January for the energy code. It is really kind of tough to meet those energy standards, and we're finding that it's a real hit on schools for on the financial end to meet those. So I'm just curious to know what brought in additional CHIP standards on top of that.
So there was a question about scenario 3 and the 2 schools. Could you put that back up and answer that question?
Yeah, I think that it's a misconception. None of the scenarios actually are displacing the kids in Marin and Ocean View at the same time.
Right.
There's some overlap in the timelines because that's the summer. But the idea is the kids in Marin will be in a temporary housing at the end of the summer. They'll go into their new school, and the kids in Ocean View at the end of the summer will go into whatever temporary housing the kids in Marin were using the previous year, right?
And then briefly, could you explain why we are considering CHIPS
versus LEED?
Versus not?
Versus the minimum standards.
Sure. Utilizing the CHIP standards was a recommendation from the Sustainability Integrated Design Committee. The thought process there was to ensure that we have high-quality, flexible learning spaces that are cost-effective over time, and we're being very respectful to the environment and natural resources, as well as ensuring that students and staff are in a great place to teach and learn. There are similarities to LEED and CHIPS, as well as some overlap with the construction code, since chips and lead were developed 10, 15 years ago, and the construction code has really ramped up more or less to meet the chips and lead criteria to some extent. And so that was one of the recommendations, was that we follow a standard and a guideline that architects and contractors are familiar with, that they're able to be clear and utilize, so that we can ensure great spaces as well as long-term cost effectiveness.
Would this be a good time to have our...
We have a couple of people who've been waiting, so. No,
Well,
somebody's ahead of.
he can respond about the Sustainability Committee.
Yeah.
Okay,
So there are people that have been waiting?
yes, that's what I just said.
Okay.
Just one thing, again, to reinforce what you just said, there is a lot of research that says great place, great teaching and great learning goes on in great places, and that have been built to these kind of standards. Yes, please. Want to make sure people who've been waiting get to speak.
Okay, my name is Barbara Westman. I've been in Albany since 1992. And when I was listening to the pros and cons being presented, there were a few things that I didn't hear articulated. Maybe they're so obvious to you that you didn't feel the need to do it. So, forgive me if I'm bringing up something that's already been considered. Oftentimes when you're thinking about what you do first, you think about what are the priorities. And so I didn't hear a discussion about whether, in all three scenarios, it seemed like the high school and the middle school came before, at the same time at least, as one of the elementaries. So are the needs being addressed at those, the overcrowding and the need for upgraded facilities, are those a higher priority than the needs of addressing the seismic issues and overcrowding and whatever else is going on? It was a little surprising to me, because I would have thought that kind of the seismic safety thing might have, absent all the other things of making sure you have the right design and the right approval process, I might have thought that those might have been a higher priority. So that's one thing that maybe you've already considered. Another thing is that I don't know the cost of each of those four different elements, but oftentimes when you're looking with a big budget, you want to get some of your higher cost things done first, so that you make sure you don't run out of funds. Again, you want to do that in conjunction with your priorities, so that the things you're doing at the end are your lower priorities as well. And then the third thing, these are all kind of related, is that a big unknown, I think it sounds like still, is to what degree we'll get the state funds for one or both, hopefully, of the elementary schools. And if they are at the end of the process, then there's a lot of uncertainty about how much you can spend on the earlier phases of your project. And so that might be something else to be considering as you're looking at the pros and cons and the scheduling of these projects. And then my final comment had to do with the oversight committees. I noticed in some of the materials in the agenda that for one of the bond measures, it was required to have the Citizens Oversight Board, and for the other, it was an option. But it sounds like you're planning to have an oversight. And my comment would be that it seems to me that it might be useful to have one oversight board for both of the bonds, since they will be so intertwined, I think, in terms of what they'll get used for, that you want to have a holistic approach to the oversight. Thank you.
And I thought those were great questions. So the priorities, absolutely, housing the elementary school kids in safe school is the top priority. But the reason that we put it after the other is to give more time for the community to weigh in on where to place the kids while construction is going on. It's not something that we felt we could rush. So we need to find a good place to put them, and we want the community to have time to have input on that, which is the only reason that the elementaries are coming after the other project. The other projects we can jump into immediately because nobody's being displaced. That was the reason for that timing. The cost of each element and how that goes with the priorities will be tracked very closely by our chief business official, and we have a lot of confidence in him. The question about state funds, one of the reasons that the bonds are the size they are is so that we can do the construction even if we don't get state funding. If we do get state funding, we won't have to sell all the bonds unless the community wants us to spend them on something else. I expect they won't. So, that would be a way to save the community some of that money. So that was anticipated. And the Oversight Committee, there was a question of mine that I made sure we checked with our lawyers and that it is legal to do so. And yes, we can have one Oversight Committee overseeing both bonds. So that's what we will do.
Makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Go ahead.
Just two quick points to add. Because there are two bond measures, there are two different types of bond measures, and so Measure E is the bond measure that the state requires a bond oversight committee for. Measure B, the board chose to have a bond oversight committee to ensure that we are fully accountable of all bond funds. And regarding the state funding, one of the good things about the state facility fund process is funding is based on eligibility and the application. So many times school districts fully complete a project and then are reimbursed funds from the state afterwards. And so it's not based on timing, yeah.
So reimbursements could be used to pay down the bonds and
correct,
refund money to the public.
Correct.
Great.
Hi, I'm Kim Trutain. I'm an 18-year Albany resident. I was confused a bit earlier. I thought we were talking about getting applications out, announcing an application process for the Oversight Committee members. And then there was talk about a postcard and about having to send out about four different meetings. So I'd like some clarification about whether we're talking about, yeah.
Okay, so let me see if I can answer this one piece at a time. The communication on board meetings where there's any discussion about facilities, bonds for board meetings, all of that will be communicating in a variety of venues. So that's the postcards, the Twitter, the working with the city, all of those venues. So that would be the communication process for that, as well as the discussion about the creation of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. So that will also be an agendized item at a board meeting, so it's very open to the public about what the process is, who has, what types of people have to be on the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, and then what the process is for the board to select that committee.
None of that timing's been worked out yet. So what?
That
we
was
don't
my
have
next
it.
question.
Tomorrow we'll start working on the August 8th agenda.
Okay. And then I am not sure that I fully support the recommended option 3, scenario 3. Marin and Ocean View have safety issues. And just because the planning for Marin is further along, I think that a year of planning, working with the community in town hall meetings, whatever, is sufficient. And I would like to see construction on the new Marin go forward as soon as possible after at least a year of planning. And of course, with Ocean View, that also has seismic safety issues following sequentially behind that as soon as possible also. The middle school is so dreadfully crowded that I consider it a safety issue also. If you have seen those halls in past time between classes, the shorter students protect their faces by this, doing this as they walk through the hall so they don't get hit in the face with the bigger kids' backpacks. I had a teacher tell me that she'd gotten stitches in her face because she was short and there was a hallway collision. So I would like to see the AMS also proceed along with the San Gabriel enlargement as soon as possible, with possibly the high school addition, then immediately following on behind that, so that we don't have all projects going on simultaneously, but that we do have at least Marin and AMS fast-tracked. Thank you.
So that would be a scenario 4. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, write it up.
Hi, my name is Deborah Perkins Kalama, 839 Cerritos Street. I've lived in the community since 1989. And I think I'm coming late to the party in terms of some of my concerns. And these points may have already been brought up, but I guess my primary concern is that with these bond measures, how we're affecting our seniors. And of course, at 68, I don't consider myself a senior yet, but the people who are on limited incomes, I don't understand what happened with these bond measures. I know that in previous bond measures, there's been some kind of a parameter, so people on limited incomes, fixed incomes, Social Security, whatever, would not be hit in the same way those people who still have double incomes coming in. I don't know whether that was taken into account or why these bond measures don't reflect some kind of dispensation for the elderly.
There's an easy answer to that, Paul.
The state does not allow us to do that. For parcel taxes, we can have a senior exemption. For bond measures, it's not allowed. The state, I think the state's reasoning is that that's taken care of by Proposition 13. If you're unfortunate enough to be a senior who just moved to Albany and paid a lot for your house, that doesn't help you. But if you're a senior who's been here for 20 or 30 years, then I think it's the state's point of view that you're not paying as much in property tax as you would be otherwise. But we certainly would have had an exemption for seniors if we had been allowed to by law.
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned we're further yuppieizing Albany by the potential for losing community members because they can't afford
We're certainly hoping
this kind
that
of
doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, I think Alan, you ran some numbers that we saw just the other day about the median assessed values. They weren't age-related.
Correct.
I don't think.
The current median assessed valuation for a single-family home is $366,000. There is a I can't remember the numbers. There's a significant percentage that are within the 0 to 200,000 assessed value range, and then a much lower percentage that's in the $800,000 plus range. But it's
18% of the single-family homes in Albany are 0 to 200,000.
okay.
No, I'm sorry, I interrupted you for this. I think it's even higher. I think it's 29% are 0 to 200. It's 18% that are 0 to 100,000, and then if you go to 200,000, you go up to 29% of the single-family homes.
Okay. People at home didn't hear that, so.
People at home and on the recording didn't hear that, so.
We can put it in the frequently asked questions so that it's clear for everybody to access.
Okay. I mean, I know a lot of my neighbors are in the same situation as I am. I'm a senior, fixed income. I bought my house 39 years ago, so it's very fortunate for me.
Yeah, but our assessed values are still going to be enough so that we're going to be paying hefty sums.
Yes.
Even though we bought our houses 20 or 30 years ago.
Yep.
And I guess another concern I had was that I'm not in Albany. My kids have grown up, so I don't get the E-Tree messages. I'm totally out of the school board population, and so this whole bond issue came as a total, absolutely out of the blue for me. I had no idea it was coming. I had no idea the size of it, and had no idea the implications, except for a few people who put things on the internet, and thankfully to educate some of us, at least, that it was going on. And that's really frightening to me, that we're being assessed. It feels like taxation without representation, because we didn't know about it. We really were not well informed about these bond measures and the potential effects. And I'm sort of thinking about what we just saw between the EU and Great Britain. We have a referendum, and the baby is being thrown out with the bathwater. I'm a little concerned about these kinds of things that are taking place. And communication is a big issue. I appreciate, Paul, that you're even talking about doing postcards, because our assumption that everybody's computer literate and everybody's going to take the initiative to go on the City of Albany website to get this information is totally, I mean, what's the percentage of the people that are on the Albany website that live in this community? That's the kind of questions I think we should be asking in terms of informing our
We've learned
citizens.
a lot about communication over this whole process. I've learned a lot about Nextdoor and learned how to use it and things like that.
That is only a select group of people that will have access to that kind of information.
Okay. So the only response I have to that is that I think that's why the public is required to vote on these things. The school board can't just pass it. So you did find out about it when you got your voter's pamphlet. That might feel very late to you, but it is time to do some research and to decide to vote no. So I know that seems late, like you should have known it was coming, but I think that's why the system is set up the way it is. That's why people get to vote.
I think the long and the short of it is, we know the citizens of Albany have always supported bond measures, and I think that to not support a bond measure goes so much against an Albanian's way of life that I think a lot of people supported the bond measures but had no concept of how it would actually hit them in the pocketbook, and that's what my concern is.
I think that's absolutely possible, and unfortunately, you know, these meetings are all open, they're all, you know, the agenda is published, so forth and so on, you know all that. And yet, we don't expect everybody in Albany to be watching every board meeting, but we don't really have very many ways to get information out to people other than, you know, to put it, make it publicly available and hope that they look. So if you have suggestions on better ways, you know, I know that Berkeley, because I live close enough to Berkeley that these things land on my doorstep. They publish a couple of times a year, the school district publishes a very nice, slick, full-color newsletter that goes to every household. In Berkeley, I don't know who in Berkeley reads it, because, you know, we get stuff like that all the time in the mail and don't read it. So
we've learned a lot about that some of the brochures that came out on this were just tossed. That just seems to be a fact that people realize, that they threw away stuff that actually informed them of upcoming things. We're going to have to move on, though, Charlie.
I just wanted to thank you for expressing your concerns about cost. I do think that this needs to come back at a future meeting where we have the report from the financial advisor. It's going to be difficult to really home in on any of these schedules, I think, until we actually see what the implications of the schedules are, the timelines are for when we issue bonds and what it does to the tax rates. So I'm looking forward to having that on a future agenda.
Our next speaker.
Hi, my name's Belinda Lesser, and I've been living in Albany for 10 years. I had a son who attended Marin School, but now he's going to a private school because I have some issues with the school district. So I heard about these bond measures, and I work as a teacher in another school district, and I tend to support them, but trying to get information about what was going on with these bond measures was difficult. So I am also seconding the frustration about not being able to find out about what was going on with these bond measures. Yes, I got some things in the mail, but they were trying to promote that I vote for the bonds. I am on one of the E-Tree, I'm on the Marin School E-Tree because it's down the street from me, and I didn't notice any information in there about finding out about these bond measures. So I wanted to suggest a couple of other ways, because there's so many different things as a parent and a citizen and as a working person that we have to go find out about, at least in my city where I pay a lot of taxes. I'd like to make sure that I can find out what's going on. So one of the things is you could post information at the libraries, the community center, and outside this building. This is the community center, so at least when I'm walking by, I could see that things are happening and where to get that information. There could be a sign that says, please go to the website and sign up for notifications. I had no idea that you could do that until one of the people here said that I could do that. And I've clicked around on the website a lot. And I think even at the parks, you could put up some signs. Not everybody is super internet literate in the way that you've decided you're going to communicate with us. So I really urge you to find other methods of letting us know what's going on in our city. A lot of us are really frustrated with the process that went into this. And you say you will communicate with us, and we find that doesn't happen. So I just really want to urge you to at least talk to some of the citizens about ways that they would like you to communicate with them, instead of talking amongst yourself about how you think you are communicating with us. Thank you.
Exactly why we're having the meeting tonight. Thank you very much.
Great suggestions, thank you.
Hi, how y'all doing? I'm Liz Reimuller. I teach at Marin School, and I am a parent of a graduate, so I've all done with that. Yay. And I also am a new Albany property owner as of a few years ago, so that's exciting. And I want to say, I wasn't planning to speak, but I can't ever not speak. That's just the way I am. I always find something I need to say. So I just want to say, it looks like you've been thinking a lot and doing a lot of work, and I just was looking at these today when you put them up. So I just want to say, as when you're thinking about which timeline to use, I think that one other point of view would be to step back just a moment and think, what is a kid's point of view? What's a student's point of view? And that would be great. One of the things I just noticed that jumped out at me about scenario 2, and I know you're not recommending scenario 2, but it looks like scenario 2 starts with the middle school and then goes to the high school. Well, you could have a student then who spent more time in a facility under construction because they're in middle school, and then when they get to high school, they're under construction. So that is an example, just an example of a student's point of view. And the other is, whatever scenario, I think you mentioned, Alan, whichever one might cost the least amount, as a new homeowner, I vote for that one, the one that might cost the least amount also. I think those are two things that we really want to pay attention to is, what's the student's perspective, and everything else you've already paid attention to, of course, and then what will cost the community the least and get all these fabulous spaces built. Thank you.
Very good point.
Hello, my name is Teresa Bittner, and we do know I was on the canvassing committee for the bond measures, and we were going house to house, knocking on doors, leaving literature. And if we missed your house, I'm so sorry. There are so many no soliciting signs in this town. But we did try. We really did. And I appreciate everybody's concern. We spent, 2 months walking around on weekends and stuff and talking to people. So I just want you to know an effort was made in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. How many more speakers do we have? It looks like 2. Yes. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you, Rebecca.
I just, while you're walking up here, just, there's 2 different considerations in cost that we need to consider. One is the overall cost will be less if we do everything quickly because costs escalate over the years. But the hit on your property taxes will be greater if we sell all the bonds early. If we stretch it out, there'll be less of a peak in the cost on your property taxes. So we don't want to stretch it out too long, but we don't want to do everything at once, I think, because that would be a bigger hit to homeowners.
Okay.
Did you want to say something else?
If I could just add that it's possibly that I think having the financial advisor come at a future board meeting to really look at the various scenarios
numbers, yeah.
and methods, that way we can see different options and impacts.
Thanks.
Great.
Sorry.
Good evening, Rebecca Long. I'm an Albany resident. I guess I've been here about 7 years, but grew up in Berkeley, kind of a native to the East Bay, and I have 2 kids, one at Marin and one starting at AMS in the fall. Let's see, you definitely have, a tough decision before you, I think, on the timing. I definitely, as a person who looks at state policy and such, I definitely concur with Board Member Black that, you want to be thinking about conserving the most amount of money overall. Cost-effective use of the taxpayer dollars, is thinking about what is your overall capital cost going to be, but definitely being mindful of the hit to taxpayers. So, and as well as, very importantly, the safety concerns that Kim Trutane mentioned earlier. So I'm concerned a little bit about dragging it out too long. I guess I did want to ask, what do you guys see as the time frame for making the decision on the schedule? And then I also just wanted to pose a question and ask if you've had any consideration, in addition to obviously having the bond oversight committee, which is required for the most part. Have you thought about hiring anyone to kind of oversee the construction, and who's going to be the point person? Obviously, this is a $95 million bond authorization. It's a big, complex, multifaceted project, and I don't imagine that the district has the expertise in-house to do that all the time. So what are your thoughts about having some real experts who know how to manage cost overruns and who know how to do good bid procurements and all of that?
Actually, I think we could answer the second one, but I know we have 2 speakers who've been waiting to speak, so I've highlighted this that we can answer maybe after the 2 speakers have a chance to speak. Highlight, we can answer.
Hi, my name is Diana Hayton. I was on the Integrated Design Committee for the district. That committee started at some point this winter. I don't remember exactly when. And it grew out of a concern as to the oversight of the design of the 3 schools that had already started in design, McGregor, Marin, and Ocean View. So the committee made a strong recommendation to follow CHIP's high-performance school criteria because of what we saw in the design of those projects. And the CHIPS criteria allows the district and it allows the design team to look at design holistically. So it's not just achieving net zero energy or water efficiency, it's also about having daylighting in your schools and acoustic environments that are good for learning, and safe outdoor play areas. I mean, it's a whole list of criteria, and each project will be very specific to its site and to its use and its age group, and that each project will have the flexibility. But I want you to know it grew out of a concern as to the approach, the designs that were in the works so far. And the district took that time, and the board took that time to take a breath and allow the community to participate in setting values for the district as to what these schools should embody. So on that note, I'd like to encourage the board to consider keeping the Integrated Design Committee as part of the process. I understand you're not required to do that by law. You know, it's another kind of oversight that we think is very valuable. And so the community knows there were 4 design community members on the board, on the committee, along with district representatives and a city council representative. There were a number of people. And we welcome more input and participation as well. So I'd like to recommend that there be a consideration that continue. One of our concerns was that there be this standard of care that's equal throughout all the projects. So that's very important because they were previously taken on individually by site committees, and having an even hand across all the projects will be very important, I think, to the community. So lastly, I'd just like to echo the comment about priorities. As you set these schedules, I definitely lean towards supporting a slower approach so that we can learn from our experiences and apply lessons learned to the next project. I'm not sure I understand issues like how we're selecting design build for the projects. I think we really have to delve into the specifics of each project and establish our priorities before putting it out there. Thank you.
So my name is Alan Burkett. I'm an Albany resident. Some notes here, so I remember who I am. A resident, homeowner, parent, kids in school, and I manage capital projects as on the side. So I was on the committee. I was happy to be on the committee, but I'm not speaking as a representative of the committee. That was presented last board meeting. So my comments, I don't want them to be taken as Integrated Design Committee comments. First, I just want to say, acknowledge the site committee's work, the community's work, the staff's work to get all this discussed into this point, this place in time where you put a measure on the ballot, and surprised me also. So I heard about the integrated design, but I was a little surprised. It's a lot of money. So we're writing a big check, potentially, and it's a huge investment, and Albany's all about schools. So that's all good, but while I don't think you need to stop, I think it needs to be taken one at a time. And I don't think taking time necessarily is more money, because I think you can learn from the projects and implement things as you go along. So it's just a bias I have. And you shouldn't rush and you shouldn't disrupt everything. So that's just, but I want to acknowledge all the work that's been done. And I think there needs to be a lot more community engagement going forward, because it's a huge check we're writing. Even though it's all about schools, we're going to live with these for a long time. We've been living with the schools we have for a long time. So, and take students into account. So I agree with all that. The CHIPS thing, it is a framework to discuss and standardize and make equitable the application of the money across the sites. That's the intent. That was a comment from the committee. So my little ask is that you started, you put a timeline out that said what the plan was, but that that be published, which you did, that it lists a sequence and cost so that you tie the costs on the timeline to the comments here about spending your money too early, put it on the timeline, and include escalation, contingency, and everything you really want to do, and state what the term of the bond is. If you want this money to last for 10 years, say this is the 10-year plan. We're not coming back to the community for 10 years, or 5 years, or 15 years, whatever the plan is. And I think you should also list the things you left off the list so people know what you're not doing. And you're not going to do it till 2030. Include relocations. And then have a plan, one plan, that you get through community engagement, publish it. It can change, but just have the plan posted so that everybody knows, so that people here that came, that showed up, can go to it and find it. Anyway. And then that's it, really. But I would advocate for excellence, not competence, in these schools, that we really push ourselves and the designers and everybody working to not just have an adequate solution, but an excellent solution. And that's going to take some time. Thank you.
A bit of comment on that. So there is a facilities master plan. It's on the AUSD website. It will discuss all of these, most of these projects here. There's nothing on it about the annex at Albany High because that came up only within the past year. And things left off the table include, I was looking at this today, it's AHS Little Theater renovation. And reading about it, it's big. Let's knock down the arts building, put up a 3-story thing, and an auditorium, quote, like big enough to use or big enough to be useful. The current auditorium we have, the largest auditorium we have in the district, seats less or barely one class. All the 9th graders could get into it and it would be full. So that is off the table until whenever. That's a long way out. So facilities priorities is an ongoing thing. There is a past master plan. I hope we'll go to talk about it in the coming year is what should we do now and really tie it back to this. What should we be doing among these projects at what pace given these other things? So, great comments.
It's now 9 o'clock. We need to extend the meeting.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It was supposed to be over
We have
at
25
Supposed to be
minutes.
over at 9:05.
There are 2 outstanding questions that I think Alan and I can address.
So we moving, do we have a motion to extend the meeting? I heard 25 minutes.
Yes, that's
There's
second.
25
All agreed?
minutes of agenda.
Good.
Yeah, I can do that. I need to leave no later than 9:30.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll need to have
So don't
approved
talk
the
too much
budget.
anyway.
So the 2 items?
Okay, the 2 questions that were still outstanding are, hold on one second, I'm getting there. Have we thought about someone to oversee the construction projects?
Yes, given the complexity of the various projects, spending money to ensure these projects are done well, done effectively, and that after completion, being reviewed to ensure that they're also performing well is an absolute need.
Okay. The second question was, what is the time frame for making a decision on facilities priorities? There was a third question. What is that may be the easier question. What is the process for determining the design and build of the projects? I'm assuming that was, I'm not sure if that was about design, build, lease back, and if that is the question, we will be bringing to the board those options also for discussion. The timelines for making decisions on facilities priorities, I believe now that the board has some scenarios, we will definitely be agendizing this topic to start talking about timelines. Am I correct?
When we're not back till August the 8th, so we have to actually sketch out that timeline
Yes.
before August.
I could just add that I don't anticipate there being any action prior to having a financial advisor come on board to really spell out various costs and tax impacts for various scenarios.
So we'll figure that out and let the public know, so they'll know what we're deciding when and how to get input in. Great. I want to thank everybody for coming and participating in this part of the meeting, and more to come. Thank you very much. Which brings us to... Charlie's got his hand up.
You need to look this way.
I need eyes.
I do have a question or two, and I appreciate everything everybody has said, and I want to think about it. I have a strong inclination to avoid at all costs construction of more than one project at a time. So I have a very, I'm open to hearing about scenarios in which there is construction of more than one project, but I'm skeptical of our ability to manage more than one project at a time. And I think I need to hear a lot more about how that could possibly be done. Otherwise, I think the default really does need to be one project at a time so that we take our time, we learn from each project, and we don't overstretch our resources. So I want to talk about that some more, but that is my inclination. Having said that, I do wonder if there is, we're looking at scenario 2 here. That is very helpful. I wonder if there might be a scenario 2A in which one could do the design phase of both the high school and middle school projects concurrently with the intent that the construction phases would be sequenced. Is there any reason there is a gap here? Is there a necessary gap there? Could those design phases be done in parallel? And part of the reason I ask that is that I will be very surprised if there is not a delay in one or more projects. I will be very surprised. One of them will get hung up in DSA, or one of them will require more work by our architects than we're expecting. So one of them is going to take longer than expected. And so what I am wondering is if the design phases could be done in parallel, could we not then do whichever one is ready to go for the construction phase first, and the one that's been delayed the longest then becomes the one that goes second? So that would be my question about could there be a scenario 2A?
Interesting thought.
Interesting.
So more to come.
Yeah.
I think that we're ready to move on, though, and we'll be talking more and more and more. Adopt the budget, number 3, 2016-17 budget.
Thank you, President Rosenbaum. Because Alan hasn't spoken enough tonight, I'm going to have him bring forth this the 2016-17 budget for adoption. The board did review this and discuss it at the last board meeting. Mr. Gard.
Page 249.
Thank you. So since our last board meeting where I provided an update about, or where I provided information about the proposed budget for 2016-17, the governor has signed the state budget, and the state now has a budget. The legislators are able to be paid, and that possibly changes our budget, but that occurs every year because we have a statutory requirement to have a budget in place by June 30th, regardless of the state's adoption of their own budget. I will be attending a workshop in 2 weeks to really see how the state budget impacts Albany, and I'll be able to provide an update to the board after that. With this current budget that's being proposed, we are at the 9% reserve level. This is a reserve level that was a policy that was approved by the board last year in order to ensure that we have sufficient cash on hand to meet payroll, as well as sufficient time in order to address the fluctuations in state funding, because the state funding contributes a majority of our revenues. And so with that, I'm moving that we approve the 2016-17 budget.
Any board questions? Charlie?
Well, I should say that I don't have a question, and it's not because this is unimportant. It's very important, but we've actually had an opportunity to review this previously, and so I think many of our questions were addressed previously.
I just observed that the governor did not veto anything this time, no line item vetoes. Apparently the last time that happened was when Governor Brown was governor the first time.
Interesting.
Also worth noting that one of the things that they did with the budget is they put money in the rainy day fund. So maybe the next time there is a trough due to a recession, et cetera, it won't be that deep. So
Yeah, we'll see.
So seeing no questions and no more comments, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the 2016-17 budget.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for all that work, Alan.
Yes.
Brings us to Resolution 2015-16-23, declaring results of school board election for Measure B.
Thank you, President Rosenbaum. I'm going to turn this and the next item over to Mr. Guard. He's going to be very happy to ask you to vote on this.
As with any bond or parcel tax election placed on the ballot, the school district is required to incorporate the results, pass or fail, into the board minutes. So it's a permanent. It's a permanent record on the results of a measure that the district approved. And with the county registrar of voters certifying the results on June 22nd, we have two resolutions here. Resolution 2015-16-23, which certifies the results of Measure B, and the subsequent item is Resolution 2015-16-24, which certify the results for Measure E. This is in the board backup, I should note that there were almost 11,000 registered voters in the city of Albany, and 67% were able to vote on these measures, and 69% of those who voted voted for Measure B, and 73% voted for Measure E.
So you are recommending?
So I am recommending that the board approve Resolution 2015-16-23.
And I don't think we need to read that into the record. I think we can just, do we have a motion?
Just one
Question.
comment. So I sent a note to the city clerk about this, but the fascinating thing from a process standpoint is that Measure E got like 500 fewer votes than Measure B, almost certainly because it was this tiny little line at the top of the back of the ballot. And looking at the numbers in the board packet, it looks like that it was mostly mail-ins, that the people who missed this were the ones who were sitting at home reading through, filling it out, and sending it in. And I hope that the city acts on making sure that we somehow can, and it's a county ballot thing. I don't know if we have the leverage with the county, but it'd be really good if and that's 8% of the vote. Mm-hmm. B passed by 2%. If that had happened to Measure B and we had lost 500 votes, yes or no, it could really have messed up an election. So it'd be interesting to see if we can do something to get the word up to the county to not have one of these butterfly ballot hanging Chad sorts of incidents kill an otherwise meritable measure.
It's a really good point.
We could tell the county we don't like it, but I doubt if they'll care.
It's actually almost unfair. I know that our committee got the word out. Please look at that last page. Please look at that last page.
Anyway, I will move that we approve the resolution to 2015-16-23 declaring results of school bond election Measure B.
Do we have a second?
I will second, but I would like to comment briefly by saying that thank you to all the members of the community and to the staff who supported the measures, but I hope that all of the board members and all of the staff, all the rest of the community will keep in mind those that either voted no or who expressed their concerns about the costs for those on fixed incomes and for those for whom this was going to be, a difficult and a larger expense than they anticipated. I think we need to recognize and respect that and keep those that, even if it's a minority, in mind during this entire continuing process. But I do second the motion.
Thank you for that, Pat. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Now we have the last resolution, 2015-16-24.
Resolution 2015-16-24 is to declare the results of school bond Measure E, and I recommend that the board approve this resolution.
Any questions? We have a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations to the district, congratulations, and thank you, Pat, for those comments. We are now at agenda items introduced by the board.
Oh, okay. We did have one or two mentioned tonight,
Yes.
right? So do we have notes of what they are?
Well, for one, we need to agendize the timeline,
I have the list, yes.
and you have,
Yes, the items that we need to agendize will be, hold on one second, having the financial advisor come and discuss options and impact to taxpayers, agendize future board meetings to discuss facilities timelines, and I also heard agendize oversight, the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, and also to have information on the process for the decision about design build of the projects.
I don't remember any others.
I don't either, but I'm too tired to remember anything right now.
Okay, so that's that. We don't have any other matters to introduce, so we are now adjourned.